It's that time of the week. You've been waiting for it. What day is it, man?
It's Friday, baby. And this is that time where you can see on the shirt of Flame over here, it's TLF. Tier List Fridays, baby. This is the special one.
Special edition, something that you guys have been asking for a gazillion weeks, especially on stream. We're talking about melee specs in alpha and how good they are. No, we will not talk about damage because there's no real damage right now. Everybody either does a gazillion or no damage at all. Things will be tuned out once the expansion comes closer to release, so don't forget about it. We'll talk about
talents, man. Talents. How the talents are looking,
playstyles.
This is like the thing that we've kind of wanted to do, but we needed a lot more to get in. So we have, obviously there's a lot more updates to be had on a couple of the specs, but we're gonna do this tier list based on what we have right now. Okay, so if things will change, we're gonna have updates for this. There's obviously gonna be ranged and healers and tanks and all of that, but it's our first official Dragonflight tier list for melee DPS, and you know, we tested all of these, like you've seen the videos probably. You know, Flame has tested, you know, the warriors and the shamans and all of that. I tested the paladins and the rogues, the druids and all of that. And it was like, speaking of the paladins, I think everybody knows they're pushing for this consecration build, right? And you know, initially I was a little bit excited because, like, okay, I'm gonna put all the nodes into consecration.
I saw you doing that.
See how that works. I, you know, blasted a dungeon through. I opened my Warcraft Logs app and it was shit. And then I realized, like, listen, you cannot push this consecration build and not have it tuned properly. And I would have never been able to see that without the Warcraft Logs app. And I think that's the only app that works currently.
It's the only external app or add-on of any kind that works for us to be able to tell what kind of output each spec does. And that's where we can see the ridiculousness of Pro Warriors out DPSing every DPS in the game. And then like Warlocks doing less than tanks. But the companion app is an amazing app if you want to track your progress specifically live in a dungeon or in a raid. You can do that. You can load your characters, you can load your logs, you can do it on the fly inside the game. You don't need to do anything external, and obviously you can easily download it from the warcraftlogs.com website. There's steps there that you can click, buttons that you can interact with and get it sorted in like 1 minute, 2 minutes.
If you have alpha, it's definitely the best way to see how you're performing, and once the beta comes in, it will work there as well. So this is the thing, right? I mean, I used it to see, okay, the consecration build, big damage or no?
Big damage. What is that?
No. And there you'll also sound like the evokers, because add-ons still don't work on the alpha. So this is why a Warcraft Logs app is so good, because you can actually are able to see the exact performance currently over there, but you know, tuning and all of that. So thank you, Warcraft Logs app, for sponsoring the video, and now
making us able to actually play the alpha. And
and remember, click the link in the description. It's over there. You can download it and use it on live, on the alpha, on the beta. Doesn't matter. It works everywhere. Remember, click the link in the description. It will help us tremendously.
Even the bathroom
if you
works
do so. All right, let's get into it. First on the list, the Arms Warrior.
Ooh, arms. We went into Arms 2 weeks ago when they added the Warrior talents, and I was actually surprised. I was off the bat, I was always an Arms fan, always Arms over Fury, but we can honestly tell that, you know, Fury's been slapping Arms in the face for the last couple of years. It is what it is. However, damage aside, the types of builds that you have and the interaction that you have with the talents make Arms such an incredibly fun DPS, not only to play but also to build, because with the new talents you can actually path in different ways. And sure, we can talk about the fact that within 3 or 4 months we're gonna have a guide on and tell you exactly what to pick, but until then, or if you're not interested in that, you can still have fun and build it all the way you want to, and it slaps. You have all of the cool legendaries in Shadowlands there, you have all of the cool talents that we've had in the past, some of them reworked, coming back with Test of Might from BFA, which was kind of a fan favorite for some people, and it kind of put Arms on the map in the last couple of years, because prior to that, I don't think people knew Arms existed.
Come on, man, come on. Now, Arms was always like one of the fan favorites, and sure, you have Fury to compete over there, which is, you know, a lot more smoother, but in terms of like the pathing and what they choose to do with the talent so far, it's looking very, very decent. I think a lot of the Arms players would be happy. And I do believe this is an A tier.
A tier for sure. It's looking, because when especially, I don't know how you're doing this, but when I look at them, I'm trying to think, I was like, oh, is this something that I would main, right?
Oh yeah, that's the first thing.
Because obviously it has to be fun. Of course, it has to do damage eventually, but since we cannot tell that, we can only go off the talents in the builds. So it's looking like a decent main contender.
I mean, when we're looking at the talents and how we're going to rank these, is basically, okay, how much does it make sense? How much logical pathing there is over there? How much build diversity there is over there? How much, I would say, things that are returning that used to be like fan favorites or whatnot, and basically just have a cohesive talent structure overall. So this is and we kind of like guided from examples from like the shaman, which we'll get to, possibly even like, you know, the rogues and stuff. And speaking of the rogues, let's get into the assassination.
Poisons.
Assassination is, I think, at the moment, up until further changes are coming in, one of like the most bonkers specs that could ever be. Like the enabling things that happen in the general rogue talent tree with the assassination spec tree are a little bit crazy. So I'm pretty sure tuning wise is going to be toned down a lot. But of course, as assassination, you will get access to Shadowlands, which will theoretically, not working on the alpha, but theoretically grant you growths for everybody in the party. And you. Also, Assassination had an initial talent spec build that was pretty good, but then they changed it and iterated upon it, and it's actually even better. Not to mention that they received an AoE push ability that would spread, you know, bleeds on targets around you, which is very nice. It really, this was a quality of life that a lot of assassination mains asked for. It's like, okay, the high maintenance you need with the spec to be able to compete in Mythic Plus was, you know, grow, rupture, everybody and all of that. Well, that may seem to change. Also, I feel like the pathing is very clear, very concise. There's still a couple of issues here and there, but nothing too major. Plus the fact that, you know, the dev working on the whole rogue class tree is very open and is getting in feedback from the players. Assassination is also an A tier in all regards. Is very, very good.
Ideal. This Assassination has been a spec that I've been having my eyes on for years, and the way that it's looking right now, it's one of the examples of how talent trees can be designed, where you have like poisons, you have bleeds, you have single target, you have AoE, you have clear indications of where to go, and since it was like one of the first ones out, it puts a lot of confidence into, you know, everybody getting a proper talent set. And speaking of proper, oh my god, we cannot not talk about proper and Enhancement Shaman being one of the best designs melee specs. Like, Enhancement is fun, right? You're slapping earths and thunders and flame shocks and lava eruptions and whatever you want. And you can also summon like a bazillion wolves, because why not? Bazillion is a number, by the way. If you're not an Enhancement man, you don't know.
I learned about it.
But the Enhancement is, in terms of talent definition, and they also had updates, I believe, an S tier melee spec purely from the talents and the designs. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to main it. I'm definitely going to play it as an alt, but in terms of like how the talents are, it's Shaman as a whole class is maybe the best, even to this day, right now, the best designed talent class so far, with Shaman taking the cake, probably better than Elemental as well in terms of a DPS spec.
And has been taking the cake.
Enhancement being better than Elemental is what I mean. It's looking good. It's looking to be like, if you want to have a good experience and see what the talent system can do to a class,
this is it.
Enhancement is the thing.
This is it. Not so much for the next one on the list.
Oh shit.
Feral Druid, and this is I think this is the spec. This together with Paladin are the specs that haven't received any word from the devs currently, and we still have like the initial build talent build that we had, a couple of changes here and there. So the main problem with Feral, there's multiple, but I think the main problem is, first of all, Berserk has been split up into like 4 different nodes and stuff, and it basically it's a mess, and it doesn't make sense at all going through it and try to make it work as it used to be. Second, there's still Sabertooth over there, and I know a lot of people like it. There's a lot of people that don't like it. It's a matter of where do you want the spec to be? Do you want it to be the OG Feral, where you would have like, you know, the bleed damage overall, or do you want it to be this whole pump ferocious bite build? Regardless of where you stand on that spectrum, the build is not consistent at all with what it's supposed to be in any of these regards. there's a lot of there's also a lot of pathing issues.
Oh man!
When you look at what you have to go through to get to certain nodes, as opposed to like a shaman or a rogue, you can clearly see there's a bigger hurdle to get past on. So there's been multiple feedbacks on Feral. Not gonna go too much on it. It's just in a bad place right now.
It's due for updates. I mean, even with Max's interview with Ian, they said that they know the druids are in a bad state, and Feral is like the poster boy of doing bad right now. And I think it's probably a D tier in terms of design. Hopefully, and we know what the changes are gonna happen, right? So don't despair just yet. It's gonna be better. Hopefully, a lot better, because Feral, and you mentioned with Red as well, are one of the melee specs that are tragically disregarded more so than the others. So we hope that they bring a bunch of good stuff. And again, good stuff.
Good
segue
stuff.
Into Frost Decay, another really well-designed spec. I think it was prior to the rogues.
Among the first.
Yeah, I think it was definitely the first best talent should be, because it came out before the shamans.
Oh yeah, I remember
the rogues.
We did a podcast on it as well, and it was like
so Frost Decay is simple, right? Doesn't go into super complex stuff. It doesn't really try to reinvent everything, although a lot of people would like a lot of new stuff. However, Frost gets to play with tools that, let's say right now in Shadowlands, you don't get to play with, because you cannot really, because you have to sacrifice 2 to pick 1, right? The spreadsheet talents.
Yeah, fuck that.
You don't have to do that anymore, and you can get certain combinations that you didn't have before, and it's clear now. You want Obliteration Ice Cap, you go to the left. You want Breath, you go to the right. AoE to the right, single target to the left. Obviously, tuning will basically dictate if you're gonna be playing Breath for 3 more years, but outside of that, Frost Decay in terms of talent and how it's designed is a very, very, very solid spec. It's top of the A tier, better than ARMS. It's debatable if it's... It's debatable if it's better than Assassination. I feel like since Frost is maybe a simpler spec, it's maybe easier to tell that it's the way you want to build it is pretty obvious. It doesn't fuck around. Assassination might have some controversy, some things that you might need to figure out a little bit. So Frost Decay is definitely what you can do with, let's say, not a very complex spec, and just make it work. Just, all right, I like this, it's looking good, I know what I have to do, I picked that, I'm having fun, that's it. That's Frost Decay.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. And by the way, guys, we're not going into super in-depth analysis for each spec. We have videos on that, so if you're interested on a lot more detail onto why and why not on any of these specs, check out our playlist.
All of them, covered all of them.
Yeah, we cover all of them. So our Dragonflight Alpha playlist is there, where we have 10 to 20 minute videos on each spec discussing and analyzing stuff. Okay, so this is a tier list. We're not getting too in-depth on analysis for there. Next up, Fury Warrior. Another amazing one, I would say.
It's good. Well, first of all, Odin's Fury is back, because I know all you nerds wanted Odin's Fury, and it's fun. It's really fun. It doesn't really. It's similar to Legion. It doesn't really do anything towards your rotation. It has very few synergies. I mean, it has some bleeds, and you can alternate some of that bleeds with the talents, but it's fun, and it doesn't really matter. It's a good cooldown. You'll probably want to pop it when you're enraged, so it kind of adds a slight depth to the spec that is really good. The talents are nice as well. I feel like it's losing a little bit to ARMS in terms of the intricacies of the spec and how deep you can go and what cool stuff you can get. It's still really good. I think it's let's say, top of the B tier spec as Fury. It's a solid. So B tier is basically where, okay, I'm gonna have fun, this is really good. And I think Fury is a very good representation of a solid talent system. Obviously, some kinks will always need to be worked on, and people are providing feedback, and things will be addressed eventually, like they do. And if you're enjoying Fury, you might have an even better time in Dragonflight playing Fury.
Yeah, there's no point on feeling sad or worried when you see a spec into B tier. It's just okay, you can probably the specs that will be on the last row of A and in B tier, they still have a couple of things that maybe can be worked on or iterated on, but they're still very, very nice to play, and with the talents are really good. Next on the list, Havoc Demon Hunter. I think this is the last one.
The latest one. Indeed.
Yeah, we covered apart from the updates to mages and all of that. And I was very surprised to see Havoc Demon Hunter, because I think everybody and their mom were kind of expecting, okay, what the fuck are you going to do with their talents?
I mean, Demon Hunter as a whole, it was a class that, you know, never had really talents. Monk hasn't had it either, but Havoc always had the, it doesn't really have a lot to go on, and each expansion, and sometimes even in patches, they've kept adding things to Havoc as a spec, like mechanics, like passives, like new abilities and stuff like that. Like Glaive Tempest is kind of like the old artifact ability from Havoc.
Yeah.
And with the talent system in Dragonflight right now, it's looking surprisingly good. I mean, you have a lot of stuff coming back, like certain blades, the conduit right now that you're probably
bombardment, baby.
Oh yeah, and Fel Barrage, which I know you like Fel Barrage as well, and you can definitely play them together. There's some Glaive playstyles, some I-Beam playstyles. Demonic is going to be baseline, kind of, because it's going to be in the general talent tree unless they change that in future builds. But since it's in the general talent tree, you're probably always going to pick it, so you don't have to sacrifice. What is it? You can have Demonic and Momentum, which is something that somebody pointed out in the comments, and I never realized, even though I've played this exact same build, it's really cool to have Momentum.
And also, they removed the glide thing from the Momentum.
Yeah,
that was like updated.
That was weird.
But
anyway.
I think like the best thing that could ever happen to the Havoc Demon Hunter tree was the fact that they did not implement the sinful brand situation over there, which we currently have on live, because that is just brain dead seal. I know some of the folks like it, but in all fairness, I think this spec deserves a little bit more to it than just, you know, mongling all over the round. So in that regard, I feel it's
A tier. I think it's a little bit behind Assassination.
It's behind Assassination. There's obviously things that need to be looked on, and there's updates to come for the spec. But regardless, I think I can say for the ball, we're very surprised on how good it turned out to be, because there were major concerns for Havoc.
That's the thing, because if we took the general sense of Havoc talents right now that we have that are so bare bones, so bland, if Havoc would have been a D tier spec, but with all the intricacies that you have right now, it makes it fun, and you can just build the Havoc way better than before. For
sure. Now, next on the list, Outlaw Rogue, and I'll go out of the way and say this is the best talent tree for all the rogue specs currently. I think it will rival Enhancement to some capacity in terms of like how the trees are laid out, the pathing, the options, and how much goodness you get for it. First of all, obviously you can go for a cleave AoE build. You can go for a single target, you know, with shadow. Again, having Shadow Dance, I wouldn't say stripped away from Subtlety, but having that available to all specs, and especially Outlaw, man, you can see some nice builds to a single target, right? Now, obviously, this was a discussion about Outlaw that, you know, traditionally they weren't the best at single target, doing really good right now on live. But there's now a possibility where you can either go for the cleave AoE, either go for the single target Shadow Dance build. There's a couple of things theory crafted over there, and also for the middle you have all of the cooldown reduction, roll the bone stuff over there. It's just beautiful, not to mention the huge the raid thing that is coming with Outlaw. It's pretty
the party buff.
I mean, that's part of the talent tree. Obviously it's all good over there. There's things that are still like in question of tuning. I won't say they're like Bristol's Blades and all of that stuff. It's still subject to tuning, but I feel in terms of like, if you're a fan of Outlaw and you're questioning on, okay, is it this worth playing in Dragonflight? Dude, I'm telling you, this talent tree for the spec, it's like almost perfect. There's so much,
and that coming from you says a lot, because you're not naturally an Outlaw
I'm a
fan.
Subtlety main by heart, you know, a little bit of Assassination. Never was too into Outlaw, but after seeing this talent, I started playing Outlaw on live once again and fell a little bit in love with it.
We both did.
Yeah, this is the thing, because it's amazing. I'm gonna put it into S tier. It's one of those talent trees.
And no arguments there.
There's not much to say wrong about it.
It's really good. I feel like it still has a little bit to go until Enhancement, but I've been a fan of Outlaw ever since, you know, Legion pre-patch, and I've played it ever since Legion pre-patch, and I actually really enjoy what they're trying to do right now with the talent system, where you have like clear single target, and the ambush build is mostly something that's pulling my eye towards it, especially with Shadowlands. Is going to be really cool, and I cannot wait to see, because there are really some kinks need to work there. The only reason I would see Outlaw outtake Enhancement is if they put the blunderbuss in, because they didn't put the blunderbuss in, but they put the green skin in. If they put the blunderbuss in,
it's a wish.
Sold.
I mean, even without the blunderbuss, again, I want to make a whole segment just talking about Outlaw, but even without that, it's still very amazing.
It's good.
Okay, next on the list, Red Paladins. And
I'll go take a shit.
We hinted on this. So Red Paladins, I've tested this. This is my main throughout all history. This is the most spec I played. This and Rogue. So Red Paladins are pretty much garbo in a lot of capacities. There's good things on the talents, no doubt. There's some questionable decisions on putting some talents that are focused on single target into the AoE path and vice versa. And I've seen your comments like, oh, but you do want to have, you know, some single target during your AoE path. But the thing is, most of those are either conduits or stuff that just affect a small nudge, and it wouldn't make sense to have it in an AoE or cliff situation because the impact would be so small and you would be losing out on a complete AoE or cliff build. So it doesn't make really that much sense. They still don't have a defensive in that talent. They talked about Divine Protection, but they put it on a 2-minute cooldown. Even with that, it's still better than fucking Shield of Righteous. So that's a positive. The Consecration push is garbo. I mean, after playing, I really don't like it. It makes you very stiff. You're already a stiff class. You barely move, and fuck the pony. If you have a way of moving with your Consecration, that would be great. If you have some sort of like new things, new toys to be had, like a lot of these specs are getting, that would be very, very interesting. But right now, that's not it, Chief. So first of all, the movement situation, 4 points into the general tree for Cavalier, and nobody I don't know a single Red Paladin that loves Cavalier. If there's anyone out there, let me know in the comments and please tell me why. As opposed to Long Arm of the Law, which got out. So also it suffers from the Feral Druid syndrome, meaning that Wings is split it up into like different departments and stuff, and you have to like point into a million different ways to get your current working Wings, and I hate that. And this is a D tier, even worse than Feral output it. And I played both of them on
I was sorely disappointed with what they did with Red, and it had a lot of potential. And yes, I was gonna mention the Wings being split apart, because that's true for Prod as well, and it feels shit for Prod as well, and I can only imagine how it feels for Red. And the fact that they removed Long Arm of the Law, that was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it was
like what
the
like
reasoning was also.
People were saying like, okay, make it a little bit better, and it's gonna be good.
That's what I said in the video.
And then they just take it out. Like, what the fuck? That's like 180.
Yeah, and also, just wanna say this and then get to the other spec. Wings is like the biggest thing you can have as a Red Paladin. Okay, I don't know how it is for Prod, but without Wings, you are no Red Paladin. You're just like a wannabe warrior who can heal from time to time. So this is why I see this as a huge problem, right? I would even go as far as to say Wings is even more prevalent than Berserk is for Feral. Okay, it's very iconic.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very iconic, and you're very dependent on it. And if you're gonna fuck that shit up and split it into a different million pieces, I can go on and on. We made a video about it. You can check it out, but definitely D tier.
Yeah.
Next, Subtlety Rogue.
Subtlety Rogue.
I mean, this is again. I think out of all of the Rogue specs, Subtlety, I would say, is I wouldn't say the worst,
the
but
least polished, I guess.
The least polished, yeah. I mean, it's not bad, and it definitely lacks some identity. It should like have some form of, okay, this is a Subtlety Rogue. This is why this is Subtlety. So the fact is, Shadowlands, for people who know, this was like the Subtlety thing. This was like the mechanic. You played around it, right? You mashed your cooldowns. You set up for it. It was the Subtlety thing. It will still be, but because Shadowlands is now available to all of the specs, it feels like a Subtlety kind of lost a little bit of its touch. You still have the very good things over there, like the build. It's still very clear and concise, similar to Assassination and Outlaw. You can go for super single target. You can do for AoE. There's still a situation where you would need some, more potential on cleave over there. I can see stuff like, I don't know, Death from Above coming back and being like some sort of talent, not PvP talent, but actually full-on PvE talent. That would be like very iconic for Subtlety. I can see stuff like there was this, I don't know, shadow clone or something. There was in WoD this thing where you have a shadow and it will replicate things that you do for a couple of minutes. Like after you do them, there was like iconic stuff that would give identity to Subtlety. My problem is not necessarily with how the pathing works or whatever. It just feels that it's not unique anymore. It's lost its identity.
When you put it side by side with Assassination at the very least, because I feel like in terms of identity, Assassination maybe does it the best out of all the rogues. Subtlety is definitely lacking. And for me, I mean, the talents are cool, and I like what they're doing with, let's say, Secret Technique and the Shuriken Tornado and all of that. That's all the way on the right-hand side. There's a couple of weird-ass builds on the left-hand side, which I think it's cool as a concept where you build towards strong generators. But in looking at the general outlook of the talent tree, I feel like the most interesting thing that Sub has is in the general tree, not in the class tree. And my main issue with Subtlety by playing it in Dragonflight is the cleave situations, because there are dungeons, let's say like, what is it, Uldaman, where you can pull big, but it's kind of like a little bit out of the way, and there will be packs of like 3 or 4 mobs that you really cannot do anything about. And this is a known issue with Subtlety, and this has kind of been addressed right now with the tier set.
There's no problem if you're gonna make a super strong AoE like 5+ target like it used to be, or super strong priority damage like it used to be, but it doesn't feel like that currently. So this is why I'm talking about the identity. They need to have something that really bumps it up to like, okay, this is the niche of Subtlety. It's shit cleave, but boy, when you get that single target, that boss single or priority target, it's gonna pump. Yeah. Similar situation when you have more than 5 packs. So in that regard, I was tempted on putting it into C tier, but it's not bad. I would put it into B tier.
Yeah, it's in terms of design, Fury does a little bit better than Subtlety, but sure. Subtlety feels like it has some interesting potential there, and mostly the reason why I'm content with leaving it in the B tier, though I wanted to put it into C as well, is because the dev that works on the Rogue has done such an amazing job with Outlaw and Assassination that I cannot see how Subtlety cannot be raised to at least that level.
It's gonna be good for sure. All right, man. Let's go to Survival Hunter.
Survival Hunter is one of the more under construction specs. I still feel like they're doing a lot of changes and a lot of updates. However, obviously, if you want to go in depth, we've already covered that in our survival video. I am personally not a fan of how survival is looking.
Why?
Because
Flame? Why?
There's definitely potential there. There's definitely potential there. However, there are a couple of gripes that I have with survival that I don't see how they're fixing. So I'm waiting to see if they are. The first and biggest gripe with survival is Serpent Sting, because, and I say this time and time again, the funnest time that I've had with survival in Mythic Plus was in BFA, and I think in 8.2 or 8.3, where you could play a bomb-centric build, or you could play the latent poison build, which was really cool.
I played that in PvP.
Yeah, and that was really fun. That was a really interesting concept for survival, especially in AoE, since you could spread poisons out and just blast them individually. You had some level of death to it. Serpent Sting is also an ability that is affected by Mastery, which is something Mastery doesn't really affect AoE whatsoever, and Mastery hasn't been addressed whatsoever. And although you might say that that's not really relevant to the talent tree, but it kind of is, because a lot of the damage that survival does is through bombs, and the bombs are basically very heavily influenced in the talent tree. However, the Mastery does not affect that unless they've changed. They will change it, and they haven't changed it so far. Not only is the latent poison not playable, but you cannot really play it in AoE anyway, because latent poison is a choice node with Hydra's Bite in the general talent tree, and that's way deep. So you have to get this. You have to go through Master Marksman, a talent that marksmanship has that gives you more damage and range. I think it makes crit range attacks believably.
I know, man.
You have to go through that, and they said that they make it working with survival, just so that survival has a point in getting to Serpent Sting. So it's just so fucking weird. Yeah. There are a couple of good things about survival. I don't want to be all doom and gloom. Like what is it? I think the artifact ability, the Eagle Horn talent spear thing. I think that's a really interesting concept. It's a lot of bugs on alpha when I tested it, so I couldn't really get a feel of the builds. There's a new kind of capstone with the single target, I think it's Spearhead or something like that. That's actually a really interesting thing. I like what they're doing with the single target aspect of survival. So for that, I would put it into C tier. But with all of the issues that are coming, I really hope that they're addressing somehow, giving survival more of an identity than just bombs and Raptor Strike, bombs and Raptor Strike. We have to have something else, and I think the biggest loss, that the biggest missed opportunity, is the Serpent Sting latent poison playstyle, which is now a general talent tree. But if we're not going to have that, give us something else. And I'm keeping my eyes open because survival is a fun spec.
On all of them. And next on the list, a big surprise, I would say, and happy joy times, Unholy DK, which have been asking for a lot of the things that are actually in right now with the latest updates. It's looking amazing, man. I honestly, I'm so happy because I feel like for the longest time, at least in the last 2 seasons of Shadowlands, they weren't doing that great. The tier set didn't really help them either. It was
tier set is the boring shit.
And I was afraid that they were like, okay, maybe take this philosophy and put it into somehow Unholy. Not the case, man. No. Unholy is wow.
Unholy is so far my favorite melee spec out of all of them, and it's one of the more recent ones because it did have an iteration initially like a month or something ago, and it got redesigned. I think when the week where Havoc was in, and right now Unholy is, in my opinion, the best designed melee spec, mostly because it has a lot of fantasy baked into the talent tree, which is way above Enhancement. I mean, Enhancement is probably mechanically better designed in terms of the talents. Unholy is better designed in terms of fantasy, which is something that a lot of specs could dive deeper into, but they're not. And no spec has maybe more fantasy than Unholy, where you can have like a super necromantic summon all of the ghouls and the undead minions build, and you can do that, or you can have the plague, the scourge, and you can do that too. You have clear paths to making a plague disease build and a clear path in making the melee build, and with a lot of emphasis on death coils and things like that, which are something that I've heard a lot of people liking more and more. I'm a fan of Epidemic, but I also like death coil a lot. So I feel like Unholy's doing an amazing thing. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know who's doing the Unholy one, but it's doing an amazing job so far. And there's gonna be a couple of tweaks here and there, I believe, a couple of buffs to some stuff like Unholy Assault. I think they've been announced, which is we haven't really seen tuning on any spec whatsoever in Alpha, but they did address that. So that was good because I'm confident that Unholy is basically under the radar right now, under spotlight. And so far, if you want to have the fantasy, like, man, I'm picking this melee because I like how it plays, but also I like how the lore wraps around it. Unholy is your jam.
Beautiful, beautiful. And last on the list, last but not least, I would say, Windwalker monks, baby. And Windwalker is also like something that a lot of people were kind of expecting. And oh boy, we made a video about it. It's pretty bonkers, man. And in a lot of the cases, people tend to have this image of, okay, once they see something like Windwalker come out, it's like, oh my God, this is going to be so broken, so OP. We're not talking about that. It's the pathing and again, like the logical and how it makes sense to go for either, let's say, an AoE centric build, a single target build, a cooldown build, some sort of like, if you have like ways to experiment with mixing it up, it's there. And Windwalker, I think for the longest time we kind of like loved this spec, and we had high hopes, especially because it was in the same bucket with Havoc, not having in its previous days, talent points just being off of the spreadsheet talent. I was pretty amazed to see how they pulled this off and actually make it work, again, without having anything to look on from the past. It's basically one of these specs. I mean, I don't know if it's S tier necessarily.
No.
But it's definitely a strong gate. I'm thinking about maybe putting it.
I would have put it top of the B tier, or at least behind Havoc.
I was thinking about, but yeah, Havoc seems to have a little bit more.
I mean, Windwalker is probably better, but Windwalker got a lot of things that are working right now, like Volda's Brew, Dance of Chiji, which are very clear, very obvious. It did get Fist of the Thunderlord, or the artifact ability that you had in Legion, which is really good. It doesn't feel like it interacts with the spec that much, but I mean, it's a different ability. It's an extra button that you can press, and there's definitely playstyle that works with Windwalker. I did play it a lot, and I think it's a really well-designed spec. I just didn't see a lot of new stuff, like new playstyles. It's a little bit more of the same, which is good. I mean, Windwalker is one of the best design melee specs, period. No matter what the expansion, it's solid, it's fluid, it's not fun. A spec. When you design a spec that's not really centered around haste, it's a good spec. Because a lot of
seems like it, right?
Because when you make specs that really want haste, they play very differently at the beginning of the expansion as opposed to like the end of the season or second patch or third patch. But Windwalker always plays good, and that's a strong point. So I feel like Windwalker is a solid DPS spec. It didn't blow my mind, but it definitely has, I think pretty much everything is good in the talent
tree. This is what I'm saying, man. Some specs don't necessarily need something new. Like their playstyle is like all rounded and complete for the majority. Having stuff bring back from the past and add on top of it, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it would be nice to see something new, but it's not like required in terms of like how it works right now with its talents. It's pretty effing good.
It's good.
So
it's good.
Definitely worth a
lot of fun.
Yeah. So. This is it, boys and gals. The ranking from the talents that we tested so far in dungeons and a little bit onto questing. This is how it looks. There's updates to be had. This is still alpha. Things will change for sure, and I'm hoping for the better on most of these specs.
We're gonna get back to this in about a month or two,
boy.
and after all the changes, I'm really curious to see how things shape up, because right now, a lot of specs need a lot of love. Like, I'm looking at you, C and D tiers.
Yeah, there's definitely work to be done on these, and hopefully updates are coming soon for the specs that have not been talked about that much from the dev perspective.
Yeah.
But that being said, thank you Patreons for supporting the content always. We love you guys, and also
you guys rock.
Check out the Warcraft Logs app in the description. There's a link over there. If you have alpha, even if you don't, you can use it on live, and the beta is around the corner. You can use it on that as well to measure your performance, because there are no add-ons on all of these development betas and alphas, and you know, it's something that can be used to
it's really good, and you'll be a better player for it.
Yes, thank you Warcraft Logs once again for sponsoring. Thank you for watching the video. See ya.
See you next time.
Next time. Have a great weekend.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.